All right, we're good to go.
All right. Welcome everybody. This is Unity and Diversity Town Hall episode 7. I am Lokesh Joshi. I am the co-founder and communications advisor, along with being the senior member of Unity and Diversity.
My name is Akil Taraga. I'm the president, co-founder of Unity and Diversity.
My name is Jalen Pettis. I'm the vice president of Unity and Diversity, as well as the communications head.
And everybody, we have with us today State Senator Mr. PK Martin. He represents District 9 in the Georgia State Senate. Alongside that, he is the chairman of the Education and Youth Committee. He is a member of the Higher Education Committee. He is the vice chairman of the Insurance and Labor Committee. He is a member of the Transportation Committee. Alongside that, he runs an insurance agency in Lawrenceville, Georgia. Welcome, Mr. PK Martin.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate what you guys are doing. And I checked out a couple of the other the live events you did before coming on. It looks like you guys are doing a great job. So
thank you so much. Mr. Martin, can we start off by having you explain a little bit about yourself and what you do in the Senate?
Yeah, again, PK Martin. I'm born and raised here in Gwinnett County. I'm a bit of an oddity around here these days, but I grew up in Lawrence. And my father grew up in Lawrenceville. His dad grew up in Lawrenceville. So we've been around for a few years here. I graduated from Providence Christian Academy, not too far I was in Lilburn. So I grew up in the district as well. My summer included some work out in the Loganville area, and I spent a lot of time in Snellville. So I kind of grew up around District 9. Kind of as I came up. I went to Georgia Tech, graduated in 2000. I met my wife there. I have 2 kids. They are now both teenagers, so you'll have to pray for me on that. But hopefully they'll all turn out as well as you 4 gentlemen here on the Zoom today. No, we love living here. Obviously things are a lot bigger, a lot more people in Gwinnett County than when I was growing up. But I kind of got to see Gwinnett grow up. We went from about 70,000 people in Gwinnett when I was born in the late 70s to where we are today. So, and a lot of that happened in the 80s and 90s when I was a teenager, middle schooler, high schooler, and college student. So,
Mr. Martin, could you explain a little bit about the committees you're in and what their role is in operations of Senate?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, this last year I was appointed to be the chair of the Education Youth Committee, which is a huge honor. It's a big responsibility. And it was my first chairmanship. It was also my first experience on that committee. I had not been on that committee prior. And there's a story to that. We won't necessarily get into that today, but I spoke to the lieutenant governor, who's the person who helps appoint those. And he said, PK, I think you do a great job. And I said, well, the only thing I do, I'm just a dad. Like, I've been in school and I'm the father of children who are in school. And he said, that's perfect. That's all the experience you need. We just want to make sure we're making quality decisions at that committee level, and we want to make sure that we're providing leadership in that role. So that's where I come to the committee at. That's the lens at which I look at the committee work that we do. Like you said, I'm the vice chair of insurance and labor. That's my profession. So I understand the insurance business. I know how things work, and I understand what it's like to be a consumer, because that's our job as an insurance agent. We represent consumers. We make sure that they're not getting run over by insurance companies, but at the same time, we understand more than the nuts and bolts of the insurance industry. I'm also in transportation. That was very important to me 4 years ago. I pushed really hard. Being in Gwinnett County, transportation is very, very important to us. And so I wanted to make sure I was on there. So as we're making decisions that affect how transportation is developed, how we don't pick specific jobs and projects, but as we're talking about policies so that we can move forward on transportation projects and expand the options here in Gwinnett County, that puts me in a good spot there. And then higher education, I've been on there since I started. I was the vice chair my freshman year in the Senate. And so I've been on there, and I think that works really well with being on the education committee. And the lieutenant governor thought that was a good idea as well. Let's have somebody on the education committee and the higher ed. And then also the higher ed chairman is on the education committee as well. So we work together because, as you know, we really need to make sure that K through 12 education is working seamlessly with higher education. Absolutely. And we've tried to do that. Yeah, absolutely.
So you always say you want to put students first, and we saw that on your website as well, your platform. You want to put students first and not testing and mandates. And so how exactly are you valuing the importance of students?
Well, I tell you, I think in today's environment right now, it's never been more important to put students first, right? I mean, what we're coming out of and that happened in the spring with the COVID-19 and having to over the weekend go from in-person learning to digital learning and all the growing pains I think that we saw with that. I think that there's a real, danger for a lot of students who may have fallen behind, even especially maybe students with IEP, students in special education, because they just don't have the supports that they had before. So I think we really have to make sure that we are being extra supportive of those students, that we're giving them all the help we can get, but also be understanding if they're continuing to fall behind a little bit more, and just really try to do what we can to work with those students. I think, looking at the students first, I think that what's that in my mind is, allowing a student to go after and pursue what works for them. Whether that's excelling and moving forward in dual enrollment and getting ahead with their college career, or even if that is, hey, maybe I'm not going to go to college, but I'm really good working with my hands, and I may be a welder or a plumber, HVAC tech, or even somebody who wants to go into nursing school. That of course, nursing school does require that 4-year degree or 2-year degree or 2 or 4-year degree, depending. But giving those students the outlets to do that, and we've done that over the last 6 years with some of the Hope Grant. You can go to school if there's a high demand profession that you're looking to go after, a high demand trade. You can go to a Georgia technical school for free in Georgia. I don't think a lot of people realize that, and that's going to set you up for success in life down the road. And you're going to make probably a good amount of money. Very, very good living, doing something probably that you enjoy, because not everybody's set out to sit behind a desk all day in the insurance office. Like I do that, and I'm okay with it. I enjoy it, but I know that I have friends that are out and they do different contracting things, just a lot of different things, and they couldn't stand doing that. So not everybody's built the same. Not everybody's the same. And I think we should try to individualize learning as much as we can.
So I just want to kind of ask a question, kind of more geared towards COVID. Obviously, that's the pressing issue right now, but still within education. So obviously, we know all of the school systems are kind of implementing their own plans on how they're going to send their kids back to school. What influence does, or if any, does the Education and Youth Committee have over the decisions that any of that these school systems make?
So I would like to think that everyone listens to me and that everybody's looking to me for that lead. And I do think that I have a role, but it's not a direct role. The decision really comes down to these local school boards who are making that decision. Now, there is a possibility that, the governor could weigh in, and the governor can make some of these decisions, and the state school board can make some of these decisions. But from what I'm seeing right now, these decisions they're going to lean on the local school districts because they know their communities the best, right? They know how the outbreak is in their communities. They understand if maybe we need to spend more time, maybe delay opening, maybe spend time in virtual learning, which I understand you guys love so much. And I know it's tough. I know it's really tough, and it's a hard decision, right? Because there are a lot of families out there that it's really hard for them to stay home if they have middle school and elementary school children at home, but they also have to work to be able to pay the bills. And so it's a big deal for them to get out. And then I've heard from a lot of people that where their kids have IEPs and they just don't feel like they can get that same support at home in the virtual environment that they can from the in-school experience. Now, that being said, I don't make the decision, but what have I done? I've had people reach out to me, and I've done what I can to try to connect them with the people to make sure that their voice is heard. I do have a direct, I speak with the Gwinnett County Public Schools leadership on a regular basis. And I did fire off an email yesterday, and we corresponded a couple different times last night with regards to some concerns that parents have. So, and it's been on both sides. It's been concerned parents that, hey, we're going back too soon in person, and it's going to be a problem. But then also parents now that have those same concerns that says, hey, my kids have to be in school. They need to be in school. They just didn't do well. And I can look at it as a parent. My daughter, she loved the virtual school. She just thrived in it, to the point where she was like, hey, I'd rather do it this way long term. But my son did much worse. He struggled a lot more in the virtual environment. It's just the way that each one of them is wired. She's really just buckles down and gets her work done, knocks it out. Whereas he really needs that structure and needs that class time to kind of tie him in and make sure he's doing what he needs to do. So I see both sides of it. I totally understand it. And I know the school's in just an impossible situation. And I continue to hope that we can work out maybe a blended type of solution where some of our kids who need that help, they can have some time in the schools, but in a socially distanced way. And then, especially with our young learners as well, it's so important to learn to read, to be on grade in second grade and third grade. And some of these guys, I'm afraid that these young children are falling behind. And that is a concern to me.
Yeah.
So I guess, sorry, Gil, go ahead.
Yeah,
It's okay. No,
you go.
Okay, sorry. So specifically talking about those kids who are going to unfortunately fall behind. Obviously, we know that school is a huge tool with socializing kids, getting them to actually learn, getting them a stable environment, somewhere to go, some people to talk to. We're going to be missing that during at least the first half of this school year, as I think everyone knows. So I guess, is there anything that we can do? Are there any potential plans, anything that could be worked out to try and serve that community of students, the ones who maybe don't achieve so high or have trouble in schools? What can we do?
Yeah. I think, I've seen a lot of nonprofit faith community groups that have kind of said, hey, how can we as a community come together to support the parents that need it and support the students? And I think it really starts there. I do know that in my emails that we had last night with the district leadership, that Gwinnett County is really going to do everything they can to try to make sure that those students have, even if it's kind of one-on-one virtual time, if you will, to give these students the help that they need. So it's not necessarily in that group environment. I'm sure a lot of you guys are used to that group environment where you're all sitting there and, hit the raise your hand button and to ask your questions. And of course, as you know, like a lot of people are off the screen or they're texting or they can't wait to get on the Xboxes. That was my son's biggest problem, I think. So I think he wanted to get off and play on the Xbox as soon as he was done. He didn't spend that extra time studying. But yeah, no, I think it starts with community. I think it's something that we can kind of come together and provide some of those community supports that the parents need, so they can provide the resources for their family, but then also providing the students the extra attention that they need.
So you're saying a potential solution to basically provide, so I think your objective is a personalized learning plan for a student. And I think, so
that's what an IEP is, right? It's an individual education plan. So yeah, it's trying to, what does that look like in today's environment? And how do we give those students who really, really need it, that help? That's really, the gifted students are going to do fine. They're going to do what they need to do. They're going to go the extra mile to enhance their own education. And it's the guys that need the guys and young ladies and young men who need the extra help and they need to be helped through the subject matter, right? And those are the people we really have to be looking after. And that's my greatest concern with those individuals.
Just a quick question for clarification. The legislative, I can't think of the word now. The legislative cycle is over for this year, correct?
That's correct.
So basically all of the things that we're talking about now will be tentative for, I guess, next year. So unfortunately, there are going to be some kids that get left behind. It's just the sad reality of this, and it's an unfortunate turn of events. Obviously, we've seen that this has rocked the country for a while now, and COVID is not going to be something that's going to go away in 2 days. Wish it was. But I guess my question here is a recovery plan, because we know some kids are going to be potentially missing out on an entire year of schooling. What would we be doing to recover? Obviously, this is asking you ahead of time. This will be something for next year, but how do we recover? How do we work to come back and rebound? How do we get our kids back into schools safely and try and recover from this year of education that might have been lost?
Yeah, I think the first things first is, I think everybody agrees. I haven't heard anyone say that thinks that it's the way we're doing it, the way we did it in the spring, and the way we're looking at starting the school year in the fall virtually. I don't think anyone thinks that's the best possible way to do this, right? I think the idea is that we need to do what we can to try to get kids back in school as soon as possible. How do you do that? I think the first thing is we have to commit to being safe. And that starts with students. That starts with high school kids. That starts with parents modeling the appropriate distancing behavior, modeling mask wearing. That means staying home when you're sick to try to reduce the spread as much as possible. We obviously need to get this thing trending back down the way it was when we leveled when we flattened the curve earlier. So that's the first thing. Obviously, we have to make sure that our hospital infrastructure can continue to handle the caseload. They're pretty full right now, but they are at this point. They are holding. They still have capacity. So I mean, that's the main thing, right? We have to turn the tide again to get it back where people are comfortable going back. And then once we do it, we have to be smart, right? We have to make sure we're distancing. We're in the classroom. Maybe back 2 days a week, and then have that Friday there for extra help. I think that's the way they did it in Germany. I was talking to a friend of mine who was from Germany. Basically, half the class went back Monday and Wednesday. The other half went in Wednesday and Thursday, and then they had Friday assistance for students that needed it. I think that's something, especially for our young learners, especially for our elementary school kids. I think that's something that we definitely should look at. And then we have to, on the weekends, we have to make sure we're smart. Don't go out and have big groups in the park. Don't spend a lot of time in large gatherings. Let's make sure that we're remaining distance and doing the things we need to do to make sure that the spread stays as controlled as possible.
Absolutely. Mr. Moore, I'm just going to backtrack a little bit. You mentioned how the education committee, the Georgia State Senate, they work alongside various organizations, including religious organizations, correct? Do you feel like in the next session with the legislator of the state legislator, you guys will try to, if obviously this whole this virtual setting still continues, will you guys try to contact these organizations and contact other organizations as well in order to provide additional help to our students, right? Obviously, schools are providing as much as they can, and they're also still in planning of providing more. But will you, as the legislature, as the committee in charge of overlooking and passing bills regarding education, will you guys be trying to draft something in order to bring in faith organization leaders as well?
I think we're always looking for ways to allow groups and organizations to help out. And if there's a need for legislation to be passed in order to do that, then yeah, I think we always should be looking at that. A lot of those sorts of things already happen in the community, and they already can assist in different ways. It may not be providing instruction, but it may be providing meals on the weekends, or it may be providing some childcare for a parent who can't be there. I mean, there's just a lot of different ways I think that groups can come together to help right now. As the state, what are we doing as a state? Through the CARES Act, which that was a federal bill. But we got a large amount of money, and then of course that comes down to the state, and then the state gives that out to the school districts. Now, what's that money going to pay for? It's going to help pay for connectivity for students who may not be able to afford broadband internet. It goes to provide for laptop computers or tablets or some other way for them to be able to do their schoolwork at home. And then of course you have the other different funding sources that come from the state and come from the feds that we're responsible for helping to get out to the different districts, because that's one of the big challenges, right? So school looks a little different today than it did even just a year ago, which is so strange. But hey, how does that change the funding formula? How do we make sure we get money out? Maybe the school buses are still, it's not that they're not running routes, but they're only running one route a day now for meals. So, how do we adjust these funding sources to kind of meet the needs now? So I think those are the sort of things that we're going to be looking at in the next session. Obviously, we're always looking for better ways and better things. We've looked at standardized testing this past session. I think it couldn't have come at a better time. We further reduced the number of standardized tests that are required by the state of Georgia. Now, hopefully this year we've already applied for a waiver. The governor and the superintendent applied for a waiver to waive all of the required standardized testing for this year, just because of what's going on. Now that doesn't mean that we're not taking tests. We still have to make sure that we still have to be able to hold schools accountable and hold and see where kids are, right? But I think at least for the next year, those tests need to be supportive. They don't need to be high stakes. They need to be supportive measures to see where children are, because now that they're outside of the classroom, it's going to be a lot bigger difference. I think you're going to have a lot wider spectrum, and kids are going to fall different individual places. So I think it's really important we kind of identify where those children are, and then we can kind of reach out and try to help get them back on track.
So
And good.
Sorry. It's kind of going to backtrack a little bit off of COVID. So if you wanted one last thing on COVID, go ahead.
Oh no, it was okay. Actually, this is a separate from education. So you're also vice chairman of the Insurance and Labor Committee, correct? And so
Yeah, that's right.
In the past session, obviously with COVID, there's a lot of hospital trips for many people. And how did the state work? And obviously you guys are in charge of passing the legislation in order to make sure both the consumer and the companies are able to benefit. Were there any additional measures taken this session, obviously because of COVID and stuff as well, but were there any additional measures taken in order to ensure that the insurance client, like the customer, was not affected, also the company wasn't affected?
So we did, and I'll expand on that a little bit. I'll even maybe take it a little further. We did a number of things this session. A lot of people think that hospitals are doing great because they have so many patients. But one of the realities of COVID-19 is that yes, hospitals are very busy, don't make as much money with emergency room care, where they actually, they're lucky to break even. And typically they lose money with those people who are coming in, those patients who are coming in and seeking care for these sort of emergency situations. So the surgeries and the knee replacements and the elective surgeries is where they make their money. Well, a lot of that went away. And so we're seeing extra stress on hospitals. One thing we did pass is we gave them some liability protections so that they wouldn't be under such an insurance. You talk about, they have insurance too, right? When there's mistakes or problems, to try to help with their insurance rates and try to, when they've gone the extra mile, right? I mean, these people they're working extra hours, they're working high stress. And so this would help take some of that pressure, the possible pressures off of them working all these extra hours, and help reduce some of their costs. Secondly, so we're talking, I'm trying to think, I had a second point we're talking about we're doing. So insurance wise, yeah. So we passed and this has been something we're working on a number of years, a balanced billing law that was passed this year. And what that happens is when somebody goes to the hospital, maybe and this deals with emergency situations, and they have an emergency surgery and something happens, but maybe their hospital's in network, and they went to a hospital they know is in their hospital network of their insurance company, but then maybe one of the people that was helping provide a service, typically it's like an anesthesiologist, they're out of network. And then suddenly you go home, you've recovered, you feel better, but then you get this huge bill. What's becoming a huge problem, I forget what the percentage of bankruptcies in the US that happen that are because of surprise medical bills, but it's a huge number. And so people struggle with this. And what we realize is that this is, when you're in an emergency situation and you go to a hospital, that hospital's in network, this burden should not fall on the policyholder or the patient. This should be something that the insurance company and the hospital should hash out. And so we came up with an idea. I didn't come up with it. Somebody much smarter than me came up with it. But that there would be, I was definitely involved being on the committee, but that there would be a baseball style arbitration. So whereas the two they would come together, it's not going to fall on the patient. They have to work it out. And if they can't come to an agreement, then they go to an arbitrator who they basically both make their cases, and the arbitrator chooses, hey, which case is better. What that does is that really kind of brings those, that brings them to the middle and makes them make a lot more good faith effort in their negotiations. So I think that's going to go a long way to helping Georgia consumers, because people are really struggling right now.
I guess kind of piggybacking off of a struggling point. Obviously, we know that the Committee of Insurance and Labor also has unemployment under its belt as well as a focus area. So obviously, this all ties back to COVID. We know COVID has run rampant through the country, as I said already. We know that the unemployment rate has also gone right back up. We were at historic lows in the beginning of the year. Unfortunately, we're kind of back to where we started, and in some cases worse. So what is the committee doing to mitigate the effects of COVID when it comes to unemployment?
Yeah, I mean, we're record highs. I mean, let's definitely record high unemployment. They went from processing. I actually I was frustrated beyond belief, because, we get a lot of phone calls. We have very little to do, if any, with the processing of these claims. Yes, we do. The state benefit comes through our committee, and that's voted on, and that's updated regularly. But then you also have the federal benefits that were passed, the CARES Act, which was a good thing. That's helped a lot of people. But what happened was we went from about 20,000 claims a month to 2 million, I think, claims in a single month. And so it was just completely just overwhelmed the system. But at the same time, there's people hurting, right? So what did we do? We took it upon ourselves. I worked with my admin, and in the Senate, I don't know if you know this, in the state legislature, we are a very lean we have a very lean operation. We have one administrative assistant who helps 2 senators. We don't have big staffs like you see in DC, or like you may imagine from TV shows and that sort of thing. We have one person that helps us during the off session. Now, during session, we have interns and different things that are there to help. But what we started doing was trying to help and follow up and make sure that people were getting return phone calls, and make sure that they weren't getting forgotten, right? Because that's what happens, is things fall through the crack. As long as everything went perfectly, it was still taking longer. But if something got sideways, we were seeing that the wait was just unbelievable. And that's bad, right? But what's even worse is when you can't talk to someone, when you can't get in touch with you're calling the phones and the phone's ringing and there's no one there to answer the phone. So what did the Department of Labor do? They did bring people back out of retirement that already had the training and that are already doing the thing. They already understand the system and know how it works. They're trying to change systems to make sure they can process things more efficiently. But still, even doing that, when you see the huge difference and the massive increases, there's still delays. So what we're trying to do is make sure that people understand that they're heard, make sure that they understand that we're trying to work as hard as we can to get people their benefits. And I think we were starting to be fairly successful. We've created new systems to be able to make sure we have all the information up front, so that when we get that information to the Department of Labor, that they don't have to go back and ask further questions. One issue in our world of social media is that our office number got put on, they bragged on us, which I was excited that we were doing a good job and we were getting benefits for our constituents, but they bragged on us. They put us on a message board, and we started getting about 20 calls per hour. And you imagine one person trying to do that, and they were coming from all over the state. And that just shows how desperate people are. And we have to be empathetic, and we have to really do everything we can to make sure, what we try to do is just be encouraging. We don't want them to get desperate and to be completely beaten down by this, but to kind of let them know that we're working for them, and we're trying to make sure that they're not forgotten, and that we're going to stay on top of it until their benefits are paid. But it's hard, really, really hard.
So moving on to your other aims, you want to prioritize transportation improvements. And I read that you were also working on upgrades on 316 and to basically reduce traffic congestion. So what exactly are you doing on 316, and how exactly is it going to be helping with traffic congestion? So 316
was built, was expanded in the 90s. It used to end right at Lawrenceville, at the intersection of US 29 and where Georgia 316 is now. In the 90s, they said, hey, we're going to expand this to Athens. That was always the plan. It was always meant to go to Athens. And the idea all along was that there was going to be a controlled access, like you would think of a freeway or interstate from there in Duluth all the way out to Athens, Georgia. Well, they decided they wanted to save a few dollars back in the 90s. And so they decided that they were going to not build it that way. And I think we're paying the price today. We are already working on, I mean, it's really for us, again, we don't choose the projects. The Department of Transportation does that. The board of Transportation does that. And they, but it's really about making sure that we continue to have pressure on them to let them know how important it is. Georgia 316 was one of the most dangerous highways in the state, if not the most dangerous. And so what we've done is we've been able to push forward the timeline on the new intersection. There's one coming. Should be in final engineering now for US 29, Fence Road, and which Winder Highway is maybe another name right through there, and 316. So that's going to be a grade separated interchange. The county is a great partner in this. They decided to go ahead and take up with SPLOST dollars the intersection of Harbins Road and 316. So that was a big deal. Because that was one of the most dangerous. When we had already started this project, we had I think 2 young men from Tequila High School who were killed at that intersection. And it's always been a problem. So that is, I mean, if you drive through there now, you can already see them moving dirt on that. These projects take forever to get done, to get permitted, and it's tough. But and then there are plans now to kind of fill in the gap between Fence Road and all the way back going to Collins Hill in Georgia 20 right there, which is there's still a gap there that still has red light controls there. But it's interesting. I actually have a new website that's going live. It was supposed to go live last week, but I have to get them the information so they can make it go live. So I should have done that so you could have had the updated stuff. The funny thing is that obviously transportation, the traffic has gone down so much because so many people are working from home. So, I can now leave my house here in Lawrenceville and I can be at the Capitol. I can leave at about 8:30 and I can get there in 40 minutes, which that's unheard of the rest of my time since I've been in the legislature. I mean, if I'd have left at 8:30, I'd be lucky to get there at 10 or 10:30 on some mornings. So really, I mean, the transportation is still important. I think it's still important that we have multiple ways to get around, that we're looking to the future when it comes to transportation. And we have to continue to upgrade our roadways as well. But a lot of things now that are more important are obviously our healthcare system, how we recover in the economy from COVID. I think we need to be focused on jobs. We have to be focused on making sure that as companies reopen, that they can be successful. Make sure that they're doing it safely, though, at the same time, right? We don't want to be putting people in danger. So it's all about leading in those ways to try to make sure that people understand, hey, this is a safe place. We're still a good place to do business. Make sure that the employees that are coming out of school are prepared for the jobs. I think the job market's going to look a lot different forever. I think it's changed, and I don't think it's changing back. I mean, some things will change back, but I think what we're going to see is that there's going to be a lot more people that work from home. I think that's worked for a lot of companies, a lot of people. So, the key is, hey, how do we look forward and make those changes? And how do we as a state, with the policies we're putting forward, how do we make those changes to be effective?
So yeah, and go ahead.
Go ahead, okay.
So connectivity is a big thing, and I remember from 2014 to 2018. I don't know about now, but the average drive time was about 34 minutes. And now, since everybody's working from home, I guess there's no traffic. So that brings up the next thing. Here's my point. So, well, I mean, in terms of traffic and like land use separation, well, in terms of car scales, if we have a residential area, we have a business area, and as people will start to come into the residential area, there's going to be more traffic because I feel like it takes more time for them to go to their business. Are you going to implement any policies that basically bring those two areas a bit closer? Because then people would go on the road. Yes, there would still be a lot of cars out at the same time, but since the businesses aren't super far from where they live, they're going to be on the road less.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't think that requires anything from the state. I don't know that we have to necessarily do anything on that. There already, I know there are federal programs. They're called the Livable Cities Initiatives, LCI grants that are already there. Because you're right. I mean, when people live and work in the same place, and you're seeing this in cities like Lawrenceville, you see what they're doing in Lawrenceville. Lilburn's doing the same thing, right? I mean, there's a lot of, they're trying to boost their downtown area, both commercially and then also residentially. Lawrenceville, they're doing that. And Lawrenceville's a huge job center. When you look at Gwinnett County government, Gwinnett Medical Center, well, I guess Northside Gwinnett now, let me make sure I get that right. And then also Georgia Gwinnett College, when you look at the faculty and staff that work there. So, I mean, and they're building so much residential development down there. And that's, I think you're right, that does help. I mean, it increases some local traffic, but when you can walk, if you work at the county, or if you can take a 5-minute Uber to work at Georgia Gwinnett College, then yeah, I mean, you're taking people off the roads that are going to Atlanta or that are driving in that way. But yeah, I mean, I think you see it. You've seen that actually happen all over the county. Swanee's doing it. I know that even it's just outside the county, but Loganville is looking at some possibilities. And other cities, I think, will continue to do the same thing, because I think that is a desirable thing for people.
And Mr. Martin, you just mentioned more people working from home, seeing a changing job industry, but you also want to show companies that Georgia is still amazing to come and, you know, have offices in. You're also involved with the Regulated Industries and Utilities Committee, correct? And so how do you plan on using all of this in order to tie it into, you know, the gas industry, our electricity industry? Obviously, Georgia is a big hub for natural energy, correct? So how would you, with the changing regulations of COVID, with more social distancing being put in place, obviously a lot of times gas companies, electric companies, they have many employees working together at job sites and stuff. How will you still be able to show them and work with the legislator to pass bills in order to ensure everybody's safety and, you know, show them the beauty of Georgia's work?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at a lot of the big companies, they're dealing heavily with OSHA regulations, which is federal regulations. I'll just say this. I think it's important. I know that when Governor Kemp decided we were going to open Georgia, and that he put in place a number of things that companies had to do in order to bring people back into the workplace, be social distanced, limit the number of people that can come and go. If you can't, if there's too many people in there, then you have to wear a mask, and doing things like that. And I think at this point, the main thing is that I do think we have to stay open. I don't think we can afford to close again, because I know that there's so many businesses out there, and you look at small businesses, right? Restaurants, flower shops, your hair salons, they're already teetering on the edge of hanging on. And so I think once we shut down again, if we shut down again, we're not shutting down again that I know of. I don't want to start any rumors here. But I think what's important is that we, it's more than just the government. Like, yes, the government, we have things in place that says, hey, these are the way you should act, and this is how we can stay safe. But I think we have to be responsible as a community, right? So I have my insurance agency. I have to be responsible to my clients who are coming into to my employees, to make sure that we're spread out. And we are spread out in our office. We have, the way our office is set up, everyone can be at a desk and be spread out, and they can do the work they need to do. Our clients can come in. If they come in, they need to put on a mask, because obviously you're working close together. And so that's, those are the things that we have to do to say, hey, Georgia's still here. We're open for business. When you talk about, whether it's electricity regulation and things, I mean, again, that's you're looking at federal regulations that deal with a lot of the job safety and that sort of thing. But these big companies are pretty dedicated to doing that. I mean, they want to make sure that they don't want to close down again, believe me. I mean, they want to make sure that we stay open. The more businesses that are open, the more things that are working, they're going to make more money as they're able to sell more of their product, which is electricity or gas or whatever it is. But here's the other issue, though, and this is a huge issue when you're talking regulated industries, the work we do on that committee. And we focused on it the last couple of years. And I think COVID has shined a really bright light on this issue. The availability of broadband internet.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we take it for granted, I think, in Gwinnett County, because we have, I know at my house, I have multiple people that are competing The prices are relatively inexpensive. My father-in-law lives in Dawson County. He just finally got a decent broadband that's better than DSL. Now, you guys as high schools, you probably don't even remember what DSL was. When it came out, it was the best thing ever when I was in college.
Yes.
You can't imagine how good it was. But now it's just, you can't even run your phone off of it. And then when you look out into rural Georgia where there are so many people that aren't served, it is really difficult. So we passed a bill last year that allows our electrical co-ops to be able to provide that service. Now it takes time for them to pull that together, but they already have the poles, they have a lot of the infrastructure that's in place to be able to hopefully deliver this. And then also the federal government has hundreds of millions of dollars in grants that are available for these companies to go after. They're not even really companies, they're nonprofits, to go after and able to get these grants to be able to increase the number of people that have access to broadband, because that, especially when you're looking at rural development, economic development too, right? It's so important that they have access to internet, because you're not going to be able to draw employees this day and age, right? I mean, their kids won't even be able to play Xbox, right? So if you don't have that, if you don't have the reliable, I know that's more to it than just Xbox, but
That's
not really for my son, it doesn't seem, but yeah, I mean, if you don't have the reliable internet to be able to run a business or to be able to draw employees into those areas, it's really hard to have economic development out in the rural parts of Georgia.
I know we're sort of getting close to time, we want to be respectful of your time. So just have one more question. What is the most pressing priority that you want to address in the upcoming legislative year?
Wow, the one. I mean, right now it's COVID-19, right? I mean, it's how we're gonna do this, how we're gonna attack it. We have to protect our healthcare system. We have to make sure that they remain in good standing. We have to make sure that they're the capacity is there while we're in this pandemic to make sure that the patients who are coming in can get the care they need. But then secondly, though, I think we do have to work on, once we get past this, and we will get past this, I know it doesn't feel like it sometimes, we have to make sure that we have the quality, accessible healthcare going into the future, because that's a really important deal. I think a second thing, and I think it's important to talk about it, is to make sure that that equality is going to be, Georgia is going to be a place for equality, and make sure that people trust these governmental institutions that are so important to us staying together. And it's something I wanted to mention today. I fought really hard. A lot of it was behind the scenes. I did have a floor speech where I got up and I believe I was the first Republican to get up in the Senate and say, hey, we have to pass hate crimes legislation in the Senate. Because I knew how important it is to my community. I know how important it is for Georgia. I know how important it is for us to get past a lot of these issues and make sure that when somebody does something that's so terrible and so evil and it's meant to intimidate a group, that there is that extra punishment so that we can set an example and hopefully prevent people in the future from doing the same thing. But even if it at least makes us, we're taking a stand, right? We had to take a stand. And I thought it was very important with everything that we've been going through as a country. And we've also, there's more funding for de-escalation training for our police officers. And when they get in stressful situations, training them to be able to better control those situations. That's very important with our police force to make sure we rebuild that trust. But then I think thirdly, the final thing, and what we have to do is we have to come together as a community to address these issues. I think we've seen more discussion in the last 3 months than we've probably had in my lifetime, which I think is very, very good. I think it's fantastic to have these discussions and it's not just public discussions, right? It's like my discussions with maybe one of my son's fellow soccer dads on the soccer field. We have those talks, and I think more comes from that than even me getting up and making a speech. Well, I know it. I know more comes from that than me getting up and making a speech on the floor of the Senate. I think that it's really easy right now in politics, and it's very frustrating to me because it's my least favorite thing in politics is how, and I think that's why this group is really good. And I appreciate what you guys are doing and having the conversations you're having. It's very easy to think that your opinion is exactly right and that it's founded in you have the perfect, that everything about your opinion is right, that you're motivated by love, and that you're, and when you do that, it's easy to just hate the other side, right? Or treat the other side with complete contempt. I'm reading a book about contempt in politics and and that's even further than disagreement, right? That is where you just completely disregard the other side because you think you're better, you think you have the higher moral authority, and you don't realize that they're not being hateful. They're just looking at something from a different angle. And I think Republicans do this, and I think Democrats do this. Everyone does this. This is not something that anybody is innocent of. And so I think what we have to do is look at ourselves. And when we're in the midst of an argument, we're in the midst of, and we should argue politically, right? We should have conversations. We should have these discussions amongst ourselves. I've tried to do that as the chairman of education, is have conversations. I said to my committee members, anybody that has an idea that helps Georgia students, I want to discuss it. Even if I disagree with it, I want to have these conversations so we can try to find new ways to make education better in Georgia, because that's my goal. That's what I want to do as chair of education. I want to make that happen. And so I think that when we look at ourselves and when we start seeing the other side make arguments, then they may not even be kind about it. And that's okay. But I think when you start to try to see things from their perspective and say, you know what, they don't hate me. They're not trying to be hateful. They just see things a different way, and they're just trying to go about things a different way. And then you can then suddenly that opens doors where we can have discussion. Instead of having division, we start having discussion. And then I think we come together as an America. We come together as a Georgia that is truly accepting, and that we can actually solve problems that are important to people. Because I think that's the biggest frustration people have with politics right now, is that there's a lot of division and there's very little problems that get solved. And so I want to try to, in my role, do what I can to try to help our community come through that, and let's overcome that and be better. Let's be better than the rest of the country, and let's get through this, and let's come together and actually solve problems rather than creating more division.
I think that's
diversity.
We all need to hear. That's really exactly what I think everyone needed to hear, especially in this time, looking at how things are going, especially with the political situation. So we really thank you so much for coming on and talking with us, especially for the stuff towards the end. This is a bright look into the future in Georgia. We are, again, really grateful for you coming on. We thank you so much.
Absolutely.
The entire UD board. We would love to continue contact with you, stay updated with things that are going on. Again, just thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely, thank you. I'll try to get the new website updated, and Jalen, you have my contact information. Anytime I can be of service to you guys, just please let me know. I want to, like I said, let's build conversations and let's build community instead of separate it.
Yeah, thank you. And
Thanks.
with that virtual town hall series, episode 7 comes to an end. Thank you so much, Mr. Barton, for coming on board with us and having these conversations. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, guys.
Take this off.